I'll just give it a second for it to tell me that there are people here, if there's anyone there. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Graceling live show. Of course, as you can see, I am Mel, and I'm joined by the lovely Cara and the lovely Bethany. I won't point because I always go the wrong direction. But you can see who they are. So welcome, and how is everyone going today? I've got a couple of ideas written down of what we can do, but I'm going to kind of get into that a little bit more once we've given people a chance to jump on in. But yeah, how are you guys today?
Just nod in silence.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Kind of shell-shocked.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling Mel before we went live, I'm mostly just like getting my kids ready to go back to school next week. So that's been kept me busy.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Oh.
And it's, sorry, random little fly. And it's 9 for you, Bethany? 9 p.m. So you've had a full day.
Yes.
And it's 6 for you, Cara. Whereas I'm like,
yes.
It's middle of the morning.
Middle morning energy.
Yeah. Right. Hello from the weekend, Mel says. Like.
Exactly. Hello from the future.
Exactly.
The future in Australia is quite nice so far. So.
Good.
It's always kind of blows my mind a little bit when we're doing lives and you're like, no, it's 8 hours ahead of you. I'm in Sunday evening. My weekend's done.
It's so interesting.
I remember when I found out, this is like ridiculous, I didn't know this before, but like a couple years ago I found out about the half-hour time zones and it like blew my mind. I was like, what do you mean you have a half-hour time change?
They have half-hour time zones? What?
Okay, that makes me feel better that that's not like common knowledge.
No, I had never heard that before.
Yeah.
That seems confusing. I don't know why, but it just does.
The middle of Australia is half an hour behind the eastern seaboard. So, or is it half an hour ahead? No, it's half an hour ahead. No, it's half an hour behind. I get confused with where we go as well. It's half an hour behind, I think. Yeah. And then the other side, the western coast is 3 hours behind, 2 hours behind. Because we can't do things normally, like have an hour. I honestly don't know why that is. Yeah.
That's so weird.
Tracy. Tracy has just said, I don't understand the half hours, and I listen. Yeah.
I appreciate everyone else saying, no, it's confusing. It's not just you.
No, it's not. It's kind of confusing. Yeah.
Because an hour I can understand, but like, how did the
half hour? Yeah, it's like how did that get proposed? Like, who was like, let's split the difference?
Yeah. No idea. I mean, I'm assuming it goes up the entire, like, that bit of the world. It's not just
you know what? It makes me wonder if it's that like do they do I can't think of the proper word for them now, but the lines that run along a globe.
Longitude and latitude?
Yeah, like I wonder if they base it on longitude lines, because as you're getting closer to the south of the globe, it would get closer together. So I wonder if that could be why it would be a half hour. I don't know. That's my running theory. Maybe there's a Wikipedia article about it.
I'm just Googling it as we're talking, and there are apparently 45-minute time zones.
What?
Oh, wow. That's even more confusing.
And some of them are in Australia.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
We're weird.
That is really confusing. I don't know how you would ever keep anything straight.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, I don't know, I think it's in the Pacific, but I think it does it deliberately to get around a country. But there is a time zone that does like a wobble in the middle.
Yeah. Apparently Nepal also has a 45-minute offset.
Does it say why?
This is just a list. Let me see if I can. Half-hour time zones. Why?
Why do half-hour
I love it.
Time zone.
While Bethany and Cara are looking that up, if you've just joined us, we will be talking about Graceling. We will. We're just giving everyone an opportunity to come over. And in the meantime, we're discussing how weird Australia is because we have half an hour time zones. And it turns out there are 45-minute time zones, which none of us knew. Are there 15-minute time zones?
I haven't found any yet.
No. It
Okay,
says
so
it looks like 30 or 45.
Yeah, that's what I was finding. And it looks like one answer is kind of what we were saying, that it's because they want to better coordinate noon being the point in the day when the sun is at the highest point in the sky. So like they're having to adjust to make that like the standard, which makes sense. It's interesting to me that there's only a few places that have to use. I wonder if it's because a lot of the other places are water. I don't know.
Well, this is also saying that sometimes it has to do with politics. It's like one answer on Google. It says, for example, in New Delhi, India, they found themselves halfway between two meridians and therefore decided to be 30 minutes between each, as opposed to adopting one time or another.
Okay.
I doubt that's what they've done in the middle of Australia, given that it affects South Australia and the Northern Territory. And there's not that many people in the Northern Territory.
That's so interesting.
I mean, the Darwiners might not be very impressed, but honestly, there's not that many of them. Sorry if you're from Darwin.
So I know we're here to talk about Graceling, but instead you're going to learn about time zones because this is really interesting. I had no idea this was a thing. We're going in a little rabbit hole.
Yeah, we all became. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just a lot of my lives. We often go into like various things about time zones and stuff because people are always kind of like, "What do you mean that happens in Australia?" For example, in Queensland. They don't have daylight saving. The rest of the country does, but Queensland doesn't because they're like, no, we don't do daylight saving. That's an English thing where it's always sunny here. What are you talking about? So yeah, we just always seem to start conversations about what time is it in the world for you, and because people are always blown away by Australia being like it's coming out of winter. What?
Yeah,
the idea that.
We Arizona also doesn't do daylight savings here in the US. So we also have a few.
Interesting.
Yeah. And Hawaii, apparently.
Oh.
See, I live in Tasmania and it's much more similar to the UK in terms of climate and everything. And because we're we're close to the, relatively speaking, we're close to the South Pole, it kind of makes sense for us to do daylight saving. Mm-hmm. But when I lived in New South Wales, it was always like, but why? This makes no sense.
We're not really saving any daylight.
Yeah, like there's virtually no difference in, the sun goes down at 6 and it's gone. Whereas here, it's like twilight. So, anyway, so I feel like with that, we should probably move on to why we're all here, which is, of course, to discuss Graceling. So hopefully that it's been almost 10 minutes. So hopefully that's given everyone enough time to come over. I've noticed that my counter for my live has been growing between 3 and 5. So I'm hoping it's not my internet and it's just people are, not sure they come to the right place because we're talking about time zones.
Why are they talking about clocks?
I thought this is a fantasy world. It's not even like we don't even have that. But yes, please say hello if you're here and wanting to discuss Graceling. And before we go into that, obviously I will also say if you're here and you've never been here before, please subscribe. And if you are here and you've not subscribed to Cara and Bethany, please go and subscribe to their channels as well. They are lovely and all the info is down below. So yes, anyway, with that out of the way, we're discussing Graceling today. So this is the first book, as people should know if they're joining us for having read it. This is the first book in I think the series is just called Graceling.
Yeah,
the Graceling Realms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by Kristen Cashore. As you can probably tell, mine is a very old version of the book.
I don't have it with me, but I have the new updated covers, which are very pretty.
I like the new covers. I have the old ones for the first 3.
Yeah, same. I feel like I need to upgrade, but this is actually my partner's, so I don't really want to be like, I'm getting rid of your book.
I'm improving your copy. You're welcome.
Yeah. And he's he doesn't care. Like he would be like, do what you want in terms of what you buy, but he's definitely one of those people of, why do you have more? Why do you have that? We already have a copy. Why are you getting another one?
Listen, I have to, like, if my husband's gonna read books, I have to buy another copy because he destroys books that he reads.
No.
He just they're always in terrible condition, so I'll literally just buy him mass market copies of things I have in hardcover so that he can do what he needs to do.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, you can read this book, but this copy.
Yeah. Well, we recently did that because we did a buddy read with the series from John Scalzi, and I was like, I have the hardcovers, but I'm gonna buy you the mass market paperbacks, and he was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's so funny.
yeah,
Well, no, Rowan's kept this in pretty good condition.
It looks pretty nice.
yeah, it looks good.
Probably better condition than I would keep a book this old. But anyway, so Lacey, hello Lacey. Thank you for joining us. Just got in from my first dinner inside in 3+ years.
Wow.
Wow. I'm assuming because you went out for dinner, as opposed to I just read inside my house. How was it? Did you enjoy it? And where did you go? Do tell us.
Yeah.
So I have written down in my little notebook, very little to be honest, but my first thing was I thought we'd just give our kind of general impressions of what we thought of the book, and then being a teacher, I of course have gone for let's talk about 3 stars and a wish, which is a very early childhood way of saying you've got three things that you liked about it and 1 thing that you thought could be improved.
Okay. Okay.
You've got to give 3 stars, good. You've got to give mostly praise and good feedback, but then everyone always needs a little bit of improvement for the most part. So this is the early childhood way of saying, what could be better than that? Let's wish we could make it better.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Lacey did go out for dinner. It was delightful. Season 52 with family here for the holiday.
Very nice.
I don't know what that means. I mean, I know, but I don't know.
I'm assuming that that's a restaurant title. And,
yeah. What is it like? I
don't know.
Pasta? Or is it anyway?
We can probably Google it. I guess
we could probably Google it. We probably
Season
could.
52.
I'm glad you're on into it, Bethany, because I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Tell me instead of.
It is an American fresh grill and wine bar.
Oh, very nice. Well, I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed yourself, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation as well, since you have tuned in for it. Tracy read it early in August, so her memories aren't that great. That's okay, Tracy.
We can try and jog your memory a little bit.
Yeah. Labor
New
Day.
American. Oh, yes, it is. That's right. It is about to be Labor Day.
Woohoo! Yay!
Yeah.
So who would like to give their first impressions?
Are we doing the just impressions first, or are we doing also the stars and wishes too at the same time? Or is that the impressions?
I kind of thought that we'd just do sort of general impressions first, and then do the bit more.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah. I know I said I'm being a teacher, but I'm not going to be stay on topic.
Please couch your answers.
I'm glad that you think that's a really interesting thing that you've said, but could you just maybe no. Yeah. So
Kara.
Sure, I will go ahead and start. So this was a reread for me, but I read it several years ago. So I remembered a lot of the big things, and I remembered that I really enjoyed it. But otherwise just kind of had vague impressions, and I really enjoyed it this time around too. I feel like it held up even better than I remembered. I really liked the characters. I can see how her writing style would be. I remember looking at reviews, and some people didn't like the way she does descriptions, which I totally understand, but for some reason it worked for me. And I also feel like I have to give this book bonus points because two of my least favorite things are journey books and survival stories. And there's like a big chunk of this book that is either or both of those things. And I was still very engaged.
Me
even
too.
Though, yeah,
Me
even
too.
though I'd read it before. So I feel like
Yeah.
that's what bumps this one from like a 4-star to a 5-star for me. Because I'm like, you get extra credit for that because that almost never happens. And I also feel like the villain is very effective. Like, I feel like this is one of the most like genuinely frightening villains that like he always comes to mind when I think of like antagonist characters as being like, I actually get creeped out reading about him. So yeah, I was very impressed with the book. I really enjoyed it. And I gave it the same rating, which like I said was 5 stars.
Nice.
Cool.
Awesome.
So this was my first time reading this, and I had wondered because I know I've seen it places over the years, and I kept thinking maybe I did read it and I just forgot. But no, I don't think I ever read it. It was not at all familiar, so I can't confirm. I think this is my first time reading it, and I liked it. I also feel like it holds up pretty well for when it was published. I do have, some things that didn't quite make it. Like it was a solid 4-star read for me. And I guess I can get into the details when we talk about, why. But
if you want to, we don't have to do that. I just for the sake of
I gave details in mine.
Yeah. I mean, I ended up really liking Katza as a character. I was really engaged with the story, and I thought, because like one thing that I think can be tricky when you have a character who is that powerful is they can feel too powerful. And so I actually think the villain was really good because it was like, oh, well, you're powerful, but this is a weakness for you. And so I thought that was really effective. And there were a lot of things I liked about it. I think the main thing is the beginning was a little rough for me. It was slow to start, a little info dumpy and not super interesting. But once I got a little ways in, I was engaged for the whole rest of the book. So, and it's a debut novel, so I feel like it's pretty strong.
Yeah,
definitely. We've had a few people say read it sometime last year, but I remember bits and pieces. Also, hello. Lacey loved the book 4 stars, and Tracer gave it 4 stars as well. So overall, it seems to be something that people are enjoying. I also gave it 4 stars. This is a reread for me as well. I can't remember what I gave it the first time around. I don't even know if I was really giving stars at that time. I think I was just sort of, this is a good book. I like it. Yeah. But I think I'm probably a bit similar to you, Bethany, in that I do find it initially a little bit slow to kind of get going with the characters, which ends up being more about Katza, I guess, than the storyline is. Like it, because I feel like it has 2 plots. Kind of the beginning of it is about her rescuing the prince and getting to know Poe, and then the end of it is about Lek and everything. And I felt like I think probably this is partly because I've read up to Bitter Blue, but I feel like some of it was sort of setting up for what happens a bit later. But I mean, if you didn't find that, then obviously it's not a problem. Reading it for the first time around. It's not like some books you can read and be like, yeah, this was all just set up for the series. Like, was this even a book of its own kind of thing? Whereas I didn't feel like that. I just felt like there was probably two stories, which isn't a problem, but it's probably part of the reason why I only gave it 4 stars. But I really, really enjoy it. I really like Katza as a character. I agree with you. I think she's a really well-written character. And I think, in a way, this was kind of fairly typical YA, but really well done for having said that. Like, I don't think it's... Like, it has a lot of the YA fantasy beats, but I thought that it was really well written. I didn't... sometimes I feel like YA fantasy, you can go in either direction, and I just thought this was really well done.
Yeah.
One
thing that I thought was interesting about it, I like to read other people like reviews of books on Goodreads after I write my own. And the reviews on this one were really interesting to me because I know some people love it, but there are people who like hated the fact that she didn't want to get married.
Mhm.
And like, what message is this sending? Like, kind of thing, which is so interesting to me because I really liked that. And I thought it was a little ahead of its time. You have a heroine, right, that's doesn't want, knows what she wants and doesn't want. She doesn't want to have children. She doesn't want to get married because given her society, right, that would make her more under the control of another person. And she finds a way to this sort of loving partnership that still allows her freedom. And I think that's kind of great. But I think it's interesting that there are people who are really uncomfortable with that. So
yeah, that is interesting. Because
Well,
I'm
and I
the
like,
same as you. I would have said that's a great message.
yeah. Well, and I like that, like the way that she says it is like, I know that Poe would never do that, but I would always know that he was giving that to me, that he was like allowing me to be free, rather than like keeping that for myself.
Mhm.
So I think it was really well done. And I don't feel like it was a commentary on like marriage or partnerships. It was just like in
No.
this setting of like, yeah, that makes sense. The only thing
Yeah.
I thought was a little weird about it was when she was like kind of working through it with Poe, and she basically says like, I don't know, there's maybe I like misremember the dialogue, but I thought there was a moment where she was kind of like, I want to be able to leave you at any time I want. And I'm like, I get that, but also you can have like a committed relationship that is not like, I don't know, Katza was kind of like, either I walk out like anytime I want to, or you own me forever. And I'm like, there's like middle ground, that's fine. But I feel like the place they end up is like really healthy. So
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
she was just panicking, which is like
Yeah.
understandable.
I mean, that
Yes.
was what I took from it, that she was like freaked out by her feelings
Mhm.
because she's scared of being controlled by someone, which makes sense, right? Like with the trauma of being controlled by her uncle for all of
Yeah,
these years,
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
she's traumatized.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I
Her
guess
character arc of like realizing that she can be a good person was like,
that was amazing.
I
Like,
love
I
it.
know I just said it's typical YA, but like I don't feel like that in the way it's done and the way the character's done. I just feel like the kind of story beats are a bit.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true of fantasy, is like there's
Exactly.
especially like journey-based fantasy, there's kind
Mhm.
of like certain beats, but it's like what you do with them. Like Bethany, in your wrap up today when you were like, what was it, like tropes is not plagiarism? And
Tropes
I'm
is
like,
not plagiarism.
can we get that on a t-shirt, please? Like,
I haven't watched your wrap up yet, I have to
That's
admit. But
okay. I mean,
will.
it just went up this morning, so you're not that late.
tropes are not plagiarism. Pass it on.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why they're tropes, right? Like if you want to get into plagiarism and taking inspiration, then nothing could have ever been written since the Iliad and the Odyssey were written, or you know, Gilgamesh, or like.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway, we wouldn't even have this fantasy if it wasn't. Anyway, we've had a couple of comments from some people about the YA factor. It was sharper than a lot of YA. The reactions toward the end made Poe and Katza feel older than their years, but also right on par for them too.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, and they're like, she's 18 and been through a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I do know that like it is a bit of a thing in young adult fantasy where they kind of have them young and age them up. But at the same time, like most of the characters go through a lot in fantasy.
Yeah.
So, you know, like you said, experience does age you a lot.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I was slightly off by her saying she didn't want to get married or have kids, but I think that's because I'm a romance reader and equate marriage and kids. Yeah, that's fair enough.
That's fair. I mean, I like romance as well. But I think for me, it made a lot of sense for her character that that wouldn't be what she would want. And I also, I appreciate when we do sometimes get romances with people who don't want children. Actually, what was the Wild Spring, I think, last year's novel by Beverly Jenkins was a historical romance with a heroine who didn't want children. And I don't know, like I think it's good to have I have kids myself, and so like, and I'm married. Like, so I mean I think that can be great too. But I also just think that, it's okay that not everybody wants that. And I like there being representation of kind of both sides of that in romance and other books. But yeah.
I found it refreshing because I think especially with like the repetition, it is such a common trope that it can kind of start feeling like it's equating being happily together with somebody with having children. So it's nice to see different combinations. Like Katza is in a very committed partnership and she still doesn't want kids by the end, and that's okay.
Or to get married. And I like,
or to get married,
that, you know, you don't have to have this legally binding thing to be happy in a happy functioning relationship. I know I have a wedding ring, but technically my partner and I did a like, let's have fun ceremony and like we promise that we love each other kind of thing, but we're not legally married, and that worked for us. And I think it's kind of important, like particularly in a young adult fantasy setting that is read by a lot of teenagers, that it gets shown that there are like there are
other
different
options.
Yeah.
Well, and I liked that there was a birth control herb.
Yes.
You know.
Absolutely.
Because I always wonder that if they don't mention something, I'm like, have we thought about this?
Like, exactly. Yeah.
Like she knew down to that what to do about not having kids. Like she thought about it properly.
Yeah, we're kind of like around the subject anyway, so can we talk about Poe, because I love him. What a sweetie.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I really liked him, and like he was a really interesting character as well. I feel like most of the like development was for Katza, but I feel like he was still very interesting, and I really liked their relationship, and I really liked the way that they played off of each other, and especially having the female main character be the like physically stronger one, I thought was very cool. So I just wanted to fangirl about Poe a little bit because I thought he was great. What a healthy relationship dynamic as they're like beating each other up. Like, but
right.
I love their relationship, and I love the way that he is so like he's so thoughtful in the way that he approaches everything that Katza talks about and wants. And like, you know, when she's going through, he doesn't at any point sort of say, well, I think this about your Grace and I think that. But when she starts to question herself and her own assumptions, that's when he steps in and says, you know, I think maybe, like, I like that he kind of lets her, you know, come to her own conclusions about things and explore things, and doesn't.
He wasn't like explaining her to herself.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Tracy agrees. Poe is her
good character. I also really liked how he set boundaries, and like they had conversations where he was like, I'm not going to fight you when you're angry.
Yeah.
And like, I just like things like that where I was like, that's so good. Like, it's so good that you're setting healthy boundaries and communicating them clearly. And that she really was like, oh, and kind of internalized that. I don't know. I just thought there were a lot of really good dynamics to their relationship.
Yeah. They were like really great about communicating, even though that's something that Katza is obviously like struggling with and like learning how to do. But like listening to each other was great. Like, as you said, Bethany, setting boundaries. I really liked it. Like, it's funny when you get like a fantasy book where there's all this messed up stuff happening and like the two main characters are like involved in killing people, and it's like, it's so healthy. Like, they care about each other so much. But
it's true.
It's mayhem, but it's so healthy.
Well, they're killing people to save a little girl who's been abused. Like, you know?
Yes, it was. And I really like, too, that we see Katza realize that things that she does are always going to be hard for her, but that she can do them for a good cause, you know? Like, I just thought that was really interesting. Like, it wasn't like her using her grace is always bad, because it's like sometimes she does have to use it to help people, and that's hard for her, and she can feel guilty about that without it. I don't know. It's weird to be like, without her feeling too bad about it, but I don't know. I just feel like it was handled well. Like the fact that her grace involves hurting people a lot of times, especially at the beginning part of the book. I feel like the place we ended with it was like really very nuanced in the way it talks about like right and wrong, and like how much the ends justify the means and everything. I liked that.
Well, and I think with that, I loved how what she eventually ends up realizing is that her gift isn't killing people, it's survival, and that is such a different thing. And I mean, like, I also just think that's really beautiful in a lot of ways, like people realizing that maybe like bad things that they've done or gotten involved in, or hard things or whatever, maybe were a part of how they survived what their circumstances were when they were young, you know? And so
Yeah.
I think I just like that as like a
Mm,
deeper
Yeah.
message too.
Yeah. I love
absolutely.
like the symbolism of that. Like, and the fact that she uses her survival, like she turns that towards other people. So
Yeah.
her grace is also taking care of people. I just love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
so
love
healing.
It really is.
It is.
And like you said, especially like so healing because she's carried this guilt from what happened the first time and this fear of who she is for so long, and to be able to realize that, oh, there's other things, like, yeah, it's survival, which means I can do other things. I don't have to just kill people. And
Yeah.
also, like you said, as much as, you know, it's weird to say, maybe killing people is necessary and is actually a good thing in some respects, in some ways, in some
That it's
places.
that it averts more death, you
Yeah.
know.
Search,
Yeah.
yeah. But also, when they were in Monsey, and well, they weren't really in Monsey, but when they first got to near Monsey, and Lek and the soldiers were there, like it didn't go into a huge amount of detail, but I felt like they did touch on the fact that they were under control, and that Katza and Poe really didn't want to kill those soldiers, but they obviously had to because they would have died themselves, and they had to
Yeah.
find Bitterblue. And I liked that there was that talking about that you know, like sometimes you do things that you don't want to do, and you know they're not great, but you have to do them because, like you said, otherwise worse things are going to happen, kind of thing.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes you have like two bad choices and you kind of have to pick the one that's going to help more people.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's like Katz is one of those characters who has to kind of make all those choices most of the time. I also really like her realization that she's let her memory of the first time she used her grace be affected by the way other people talked about her. And so she ends up remembering, like, wait, he touched me first, like, and she was being sexually harassed as like
Yeah.
a young girl. And
Mm.
so it's not like she just went feral and, like, you know,
Right.
like bit someone's head off. It's like she realizes that she kind of let other people's I don't know, it's almost like gaslighting a little bit, you know, like the
Yeah.
way everyone talked about it.
Mhm.
And like seeing her realize that that's not what happened was, like, again, very healing. I really liked seeing that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think with that, I thought it was an interesting moment when she is at the end kind of in the room with Lek, and he's, you know, messing with everybody, and that the thing that saves them and allows her to kill him is that he's threatening a person she cares about. And so it's interesting that, again, it's like using her grace on behalf of other people and to
Mm.
protect them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, just slightly off topic, but just back to Lek. I really liked the way that they had all the people in Monsey coming out of that thing, because it's been there for years and years and years. And I feel like in a lot of I mean, particularly in TV shows and movies and stuff, which makes sense because of timing and everything, but I feel like it happens super fast. And I liked the way that it was something that people had to slowly work their way out of, and they kind of went and hid a little bit so that they wouldn't be, you know, in trouble. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just stuttering. Yeah, just because it felt more realistic that, you know, that would happen, that you would need that time to kind of get your brain back
Yeah.
in normal functioning after something that had been happening to you for so many years.
It was really thoughtfully done, the whole thing. I also think Lek is so interesting because, you know, Claire, you were talking about how he's such a disturbing villain. Uh, but we never see graphically the stuff that he's capable of.
Yeah.
You know, it's like and I think it's a great example of how you can have a disturbing villain for a YA audience but without having to put everything on the page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
definitely.
I agree. It's like we hear about a little bit of it, but even being removed from it like that, it's still very effective. And I feel like even like the unease that you get when like Poe is the only one who's immune to it. So he's kind of started figuring out that something is going on. And so like, because we're reading from Katz's perspective, we see the way that she's being mind controlled, even though she doesn't. And I feel like that being scary is done so well. But like, as you said, it's not graphic. Like we get, it's like the suggestion of all the bad things he's done. And even when we hear about Bitterblue and her mother and what made them finally able to hide and able to like remember, even that is like, we know what they're being threatened with, but it's not like sensationalizing it. Right. I really thought that was done well.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I think, like you were saying, Cara, because it's kind of hinted at more than stated, it does make that more sinister because you don't really know what he's actually capable of.
Yeah.
Sorry, Beth, I'll cut you off.
Oh no. Just that it's I think it's also interesting, right? Like for when this book was written, kind of pre all the Me Too stuff, the fact that we have this villain who is like, oh, he's such a nice guy. You know what I mean? And like he makes everybody, and I think now we've seen a lot of examples of people like that who everybody was like, oh, they're such a nice guy, but behind the scenes they're doing some really messed up stuff. And yeah, I mean that feels like very indicative of things that really happen.
Again,
it's not magic.
Almost
right.
It feels almost like you said before, kind of ahead of its time in that way. Like, it's not something we were talking about really until the Me Too. Yeah. So I feel like we have kind of done a lot of the 3 stars. Does anyone have a wish? Does anyone have any kind of, I guess, negative things to add to their impression of the book? I rated it 4 stars, and I kind of said that the fact that I felt like it was 2 stories and one was one of the things that kind of dragged it down a little bit for me. But now that we've been chatting about it, I feel like I might need to put my rating up a little bit.
I know, I'm feeling kind of like that too.
Because actually that kind of worked in the sense that it was talking about, like, it was developing Katz's character, and so she's not going to just be doing the one thing, especially in a young adult fantasy. Like, there's got to be a lot of different things going on to keep attention. So I feel like I need to put my rating up, which probably means I don't know if I even have a wish. Surely we must have something we can.
I mean, I do. But like, I do think I might put it up to like a 4.5, maybe. Because I think as we're talking about it, I'm like, okay, I really liked what this book was doing. My main wish is that it had built stakes quicker in the beginning and done less sort of info dumping world building in the first few chapters. Like, I think that to me is the weakest part of the book. I think it gets much stronger as it continues, but the first few chapters are like a little rough.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is a little bit info dumpy to begin with, and I kind of, having said, like, it's a debut novel, I can kind of understand.
I mean, I'm not like
yeah. It's just, if we have to have
you want me to critique it, that's how I would critique it.
I thought that too a little bit, but I think, like you said, as you get into it more, it starts to really develop, and I just love Katza and the way that her character is created, and I love Poe as well as a character in his own right, but in particular as a partner for someone. I just think like you said, it's so healthy, which always feels weird when there's so much death in the but
I totally get what you guys mean about the beginning. I think one of the reasons it didn't bother me is I have a very specific weakness for Katz's type of protagonist. Like, I just have a real soft spot in my heart for those characters that people think don't feel, and they actually feel very, very deeply. And I feel like even from the beginning, I could see, and obviously I was rereading it this time, but the first time I read it, I could still kind of see where we were going with that. So getting to know the world very slowly info dump didn't bother me, because I was like, I don't really know what's going on, but Katza, I'm here for you. Like, if I had to come up with a wish, this is one thing where it's like, it's not a flaw of the book. Like, I wouldn't like call this a negative, but for my personal tastes, I don't love when the main characters are separated right before the end. Like, so I maybe would have liked, except the way it was done was really good. And I feel like having Katza not there with Poe was important, because she was kind of leaning on him. So even that, like, personal preference wise, I maybe would have liked Poe to be more in the book for the last part, but I also love that Katza has her moment by herself. So I don't know if I have a wish. Like,
well, and also that she's choosing to be selfless, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think there's a lot.
Yeah.
I do. Okay, I have a thing that's like it's like a wish I'm holding until I see what the future books do, I guess, if this makes sense, where I'm like, one thing about this, which I think if she has different kinds of heroines in the future, I won't be that bothered by. But one thing about Katza is she is kind of like the not like other girls thing of like, I don't want my hair and I hate these dresses and I just want to fight, you know, which, like, I mean, I think it's okay for there to be girls like that, but I don't love it when like all our badass girls are. Honestly, this is why I think I liked Throne of Glass so much, is because Aelin was like kick-ass and liked pretty things, and I was like, yes, you are my type of girl.
I remember being mad because, like, I saw reviewers saying, like, it's so unrealistic that she got out of a death camp and she wanted to wear a dress. And I'm like, leave her alone.
Let her like dresses. Come on.
Is it though? If you got out of a death camp where you couldn't wear a dress and you liked dresses, surely you would want to wear it.
Right?
And like, liking to dress a certain way is like a personality thing that wouldn't necessarily change just because so I agree, Bethany, like that's like a pet peeve of mine, and I think the reason it didn't bother me is just because I liked the book so much, and I do think she does different things with the heroines, but I would definitely agree that Katza is very much not like other girls, and I feel like we get a little bit of an explanation because it's like she can't fight as well when her hair is in the way, but it's still kind of like the implication is that like she's too strong to do these things, like to wear a dress.
She like also can't be bothered. She's like, this is dumb.
And
I'm like, well, some people like it.
Right.
Character, I feel like that made sense.
And I do like
I mean, I think it does for her. But,
and
that's
I do
why
like
I said it's like when I'm holding
a little,
where I'm like, if all her heroines, like all her like kind of kick-ass heroines were like that, I would be annoyed. But if she does different things, then like it's fine.
I do feel like in contrast to her, we have Poe, who like wears a lot of jewelry and who like is much more interested in like appearances. So I like that we still have also kind of playing with gender roles, you know, it's like, I really like that we had him as kind of like a counterexample. Like he's also a really good fighter, but like those things are not mutually exclusive. So I'm sorry, I think I cut you off, Mel.
Oh, that's okay. I don't remember what I was going to say. So it can't have been important.
I like that though. You're right, Kara. And I like that she did that. I really feel like this book was very ahead of its time, honestly. Because
people weren't ready.
I mean, gosh, it like laid some groundwork and she was doing this in YA. Like I really like it.
I feel like we're all kind of saying that even the things that maybe we personally don't like as much in novels, like it's done so well here that we can't really find fault, which, you know.
Bethany, I love that you also liked the survival part.
I know.
And
I know.
It's like a road trip. I hate
And a road trip,
trips.
I do too. Well, and that's the thing. I usually don't really like survival stuff or road trip stuff, but I was like so there for this.
I was riveted. Like, I've read this before, and I remembered like the ending and what happened. I'm like, oh my god, I hope her and Bitterbloom make it. Like, when they're running up that pass, and like Katza, or not even the pass, just like through the mountains, and like Katza tells Bitterbloom, she's like, if I stop answering you, like, then it means I'm like starting to freeze to death. Like,
and she like sews her an animal hide hood. I'm like, oh my god, this is
it was intense.
It was intense.
Like, I was thinking I would read the book spread out over like a few days or like a week, you know?
Yeah.
And I had read like the first maybe half or maybe a third. And I was like, I'm going to pick it up and read a little more tonight. And then we get to the mountains. I'm like, we're finishing this book tonight. Like, that's what's happening.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I was the same. I think I read the first like third over a couple of days and then the rest in like a day and a half.
Yep.
It's good. Well, and I will say this, because my library had the audiobook and I tried it and I was like, I could not get into the audiobook. I was like, no, this is not going to work for me. I'm going to have to read this one physically. Because I think it's old and you can't even get it on Audible anymore, which makes me think they're probably redoing it because it's like an old. Did anyone else listen to it or try it?
I didn't, but I've seen reviews of people talking about it, so I know the vibe that you're talking about.
It's very old school, and I was like, this is gonna take me out of the story. I can't read it like that, but I hope they are redoing the audiobook because
I wouldn't be surprised since she just released. Like, we're getting the series continuation after so long. They love to re-release things when that happens.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Okay, can we compare this? Because when did this come out? Like 2008 or something? Okay.
I'm gonna ask Goodreads.
Okay. So now what's really interesting, because we're talking about how good it is and how like well it holds up. Today I finished rereading for like a book written in 2007 that does not hold up well. The first Vampire Academy book.
Oh,
and so it's really interesting contrasting. Like she gets so much right that book gets so wrong.
Yeah.
I think I would love to. I definitely want to explore this, but I think we might go into the comments first.
Yeah.
A few comments about what we were just talking about, and then we can get into that. So. Nothing besides some of the name and the characters are weird. Yeah, but I kind of was like, it's fantasy. That happens. I already said the beginning was slow for me. That's my only negative. Yep. I think we all agreed on that. I love Poe, Katza, and them together. Yes, agreed. They are fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't wait to all of you.
I'm excited.
It's a reread for me.
Have you read that one, Cara? Bitter Blue?
I have, yeah. That's the last one I read. So like I read the original trilogy and then I haven't read like the newest one. And then I think the next one is like in November. So those two are going to be for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. Although I read the trilogy in the wrong order.
You kind of can though. You kind of can because Fire is a prequel.
As a prequel.
Oh,
yeah. I read Fire last, so yeah. But now I'm going to read it the correct way. I'm still waiting for Bitter Blue to arrive.
I still have to go get mine. I will.
It's okay because you're going next, so you've got a month and a bit.
Yeah, it's fine. It's because I'm waiting till I can go sell. I have books I need to sell, and so my plan is to use store credit to get the rest of the series. So.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I did listen to it. It wasn't my fave. Hopefully, they're redoing.
Yeah,
close. I've seen a few people rereading Vampire Academy. It doesn't hold up.
It does not hold up. The main romance is between a 25-year-old man and his mentee who is 17.
Yeah, like I have not read that one, but Bethany, I know you mentioned you read The Bloodlines, which I also read.
Those I
Despite
liked.
I
Yeah.
really enjoyed those, and I feel like those do. I remember being very impressed with the way it dealt with Sydney's eating disorder, especially considering the time it was written. And I feel like the relationship is a lot healthier, and I feel like what you're saying about Vampire Academy has kind of confirmed what I thought, which is like, I don't know that I would actually want to go back and read those. I'm going to stick with the others.
Yeah. I'm read it because the show is coming out and we're going to do a podcast episode on the first 4 episodes of the show and the book, and I wanted to like reread the book before. But yeah, it doesn't hold up great. I think the show looks good. You know what's funny is people are in their feelings about not liking what the show looks like. I mean, can I tell you how many of those people are because they did diverse casting?
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Like the splashback with Annabeth from Percy Jackson.
Yeah, except it's like a very diverse cast as a whole. So the main character, Rose, is a Black girl, and the love interest for her best friend is Asian. And it's like, I like it, and it looks good. And also, I think they did better with the ages. I think it's going to like be a better version of without as much of the issues. I'm hoping. So I'm kind of looking forward to the show. But yeah, the book is... I was just cringing, like all the moments that I'm like, I know this is supposed to be like, ooh, so swoony and romantic, and I'm like, oh my god, no.
Somebody report this instructor.
That's what I was like reading Twilight. When I read Twilight, I was in my 20s, and I was reading it just going, oh dear God, why do people like this so much? What is wrong with people? This is not romantic at all. But I actually just read it at the wrong time. Or maybe the right time, so I can have like
I mean, at least with Twilight, right? Like I can suspend my disbelief that like, okay, maybe Edward not only was physically frozen in time at 18, but maybe his brain development was frozen in time at 18. Then like, okay, maybe I can make that. But this is not that. This is like a literal 25-year-old and a 17-year-old, and like they know it's wrong, and it's no.
Yeah.
Having said that, I dated a 22-year-old when I was 16, so I'm kind of like, I don't know if I can comment on.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like it is predatory, but you don't recognize it when you're the younger person. You know, like
like it wouldn't have felt weird at the time, and now we're talking about it, and we're.
I mean, when I was 16, I had a crush on a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that's the thing is, like, when you're that age, to you, it can feel like, like, well, like, but we just, but I think when you are there, you should know better, and you should be, and like,
yeah,
I don't know. I
feel like a lot of, like, if you got crushes in high school, I feel like a lot of high school age, it's like, yeah, you probably at one point had a crush on somebody who was, like, 4 or 5 years older than you, or even like a teacher or something, but no, like not acting on that is like the important part, and that responsibility is on the older person.
Exactly. Well, I mean, when I was then 22, I didn't think too deeply into it even then, but I was kind of like, I'm not hanging out with people who are
exactly.
Why was that? But like,
yes. Well, and that's exactly it. Is it's like when you reach that age, you're like, wait a minute. I would not do this. Something might be off. It's also like, have you guys seen these memes things going around?
The
Leo DiCaprio thing.
I did not realize this was a thing that people had been talking about, and I am horrified.
Same.
It's like he's never dated anyone older than 25, and I'm like,
he's almost 50.
Yeah,
he's almost 50.
Yeah,
because the thing is like if it's like a one-off, I don't know. Like sometimes maybe like a one-off thing, and people find love, and like okay, it's weird, but like whatever. But if it's a serial thing like that, like what is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's a pattern, and you need to talk to somebody about it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like, the graph. Did you see the graph? That it's like they plotted the data, and it is like literally will not date a woman older than 25.
It is wild. Wild.
Talking about, finding out things about people that you thought were like decent.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I mean, I can't say I'm not surprised. I mean, I don't know.
I really haven't followed him, and I was never like, I mean, I've seen Titanic, but it wasn't like in my formative years, so I don't have like an emotional attachment. But I'm like, I didn't get this vibe from you, and it just goes to show that you often do not. Like,
it's like Lek, you guys.
Like we were
bring it back to Graceling.
Yeah,
exactly.
We can bring it back around.
So the actor in the Vampire Academy movie was 35 and the lead 20-something.
That was in the movie. The movie was kind of creepy the way it looked. But the show, like the casting for the show looks a lot better.
Yeah. I feel like they could have also, like, they always visually age people up anyway. It's like they could have set this at like vampire college. Like,
yeah.
Yes.
So we don't have like underage being an issue.
I feel like it's supposed, like reading the book, it's clearly supposed to be that like forbidden romance thing, but I'm like, no, it's just
it's just illegal.
It's just gross.
Hi Beth, that's okay, you're here now.
Hi Beth.
We're currently reviewing Leo DiCaprio's creepy love life. We are tying it back to Graceling.
Yes.
Because basically you can tie anything back to like being completely creepy and
I just like, I can't imagine. It's so weird. Like, okay, because I'm 35. I can't imagine dating somebody in their early 20s. Like,
yeah.
And then he's like 50. Like, you are in completely different generations and parts of life, and like,
no. It's like, I saw one of the memes I saw was like he's now at the point where he's dating people who like wouldn't have been alive when Titanic came out. So it's like, I'm dating the dirty guy from The Revenant. Kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's also horrifying because it's true.
Yeah.
It is oh my God.
I am kind of
listen, I'm 35 and I was in 5th grade when it came out.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to remember how old I was when it came out. When did it even come out?
It came out.
95, was it?
It would have been, well, how old was I? I was that was the year. I think it was the year I turned 11. So 98?
1997.
97. Yeah, 97 or 90. Yeah, that sounds about right. Hey, Michael.
Hello.
We've kind of moved on to talking about Leo DiCaprio being creepy, so.
But we are tying it back.
We're tying it back to the book.
Are you coming along to talk about Graceling, or were you just coming along to say hello? Because hello, very nice to have you here. We have chatted a bit about Graceling, but if Beth and Michael, did you say Michael? Michael are here because of Graceling, we can come back to Graceling.
It's true.
But everyone else seems quite happy to be chatting about pages, and Leonardo DiCaprio being kind of creepy.
But and the reason we started talking about that is because Bethany, you were talking about how like Vampire
the age difference in Vampire,
which I think is a great point, because like sometimes, and I understand why people frame it this way, but like sometimes people will say in a review that like it's very 2009 fantasy, and like I know what they're getting at, but like we also have so much variation. Like of course there are trends in publishing, but like you have this, like I also just looked up the Seven Realms series by Cinda Williams Chima. That first book came out in 2009, and I feel like that is another series that, especially the way it talks about like the way it does like the female characters and everything, is like I think it would hold up. I actually only finished the series a couple of years ago, so like it's interesting. Like sometimes, not that you shouldn't consider when something was published, but it's like, oh, maybe sometimes we don't need to give that much extra credit because some people were doing it right already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tamora Pierce was writing even in the 80s and was doing it right. But I do think that there's something to be said for things being like, You're not wrong. Bethany's right. Oh, please, Michael has no idea what good. Yeah, Michael. This is definitely outside his wheelhouse. He reads mostly adult science fiction, so this
Fair
would
enough.
not be.
Fair
No,
enough.
Well, we're happy for the support.
that's true because that is kind of what I thought. I didn't say it, but it's so funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just looked up when Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and that was published in 1995.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that there are some things that, I mean, in general, there are some things that Fitz does that people don't like, but like that's what Fitz does. It's not necessarily what Robin Hobb was saying was a good thing. And I feel like, you know, yeah, like in the 95, people could write better stuff.
Like when did
also though it wasn't YA. Like I think YA fantasy of the early aughts tended to be less healthy with relationships.
That's true.
Well, and I just looked at the first Enchanted Forest Chronicles book, which was one of my formative fantasy series, and that first one came out in 2002. And that one, I think by contrast, like, even though I love Cimarine, I think like Katza, she is kind of like a not like other girls, and most of the other princesses you see are like silly. But we do have in the first book, we have like a very strong supporting character who's like not like that. And actually one of, I think, the best characters in the series is Morwen, who's another female character who is just, I love her. She's like so practical and like, she's a witch who like keeps her house very clean. She has like 9 cats who help her do her spells and everything. So I feel like even though the main character was very much in that phase of like, you can't wear dresses, or if you have to wear dresses, you can enjoy it because that's what being a feminist means. I think there's still enough other characters in the book that like, kind of like we were saying with Katza, it's like, yeah, I wish you would have done this part differently, but it's like surprisingly varied in terms of the kinds of female characters.
What was the name of that series you just mentioned, Claire?
Enchanted Forest Chronicles. The first book is Dealing with Dragons, and it's by Patricia C. Reedy.
I liked some of her books. I don't know if I read those ones, but I read some of her stuff and they were good.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
So I'll have to look into her.
Not to bring up Tamora Pierce again, but speaking of somebody speaking of somebody who can write a character who is a good fighter and dresses as a boy, but also then figures out her love of how to be feminine too when she wants to be, like, listen, the Alana books are so good.
I need to read more Tamora Pierce because I read the first Alana book when I was a kid, and I never finished the series, but I read the Immortals Quartet recently, like a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that one, so I like need to read more Tamora Pierce.
Her stuff is so good. I have reread the Alana books many times. Last year I did a read along with them, which was really fun, and they hold up really well. Like they're not perfect. They've got like, I think one of the books like we had some, you know, criticism of, but mostly they hold up pretty well, honestly.
I think one of the things that like made me lose a momentum is I got spoiled for some things that happened later, and I was like, oh, I'll come back to that maybe. And I just like never.
But they're just like delightful to read. I actually want to at some point do a read along for her Circle of Magic series.
I've never read those. I've been wanting to
read any Tamora Pierce.
They're good, and they have a fat girl is one of the 4 main characters, which is cool.
Really?
Like she just has a lot of diversity, body diversity, like people of color, like queer characters. I just like Tamora Pierce is amazing, honestly. Yeah.
I will hold you to that read along idea because that sounds great.
Definitely.
I have them. I actually like tracked down because they're out of print. I like tracked down physical copies of them last year because I was like, I want to reread these at some point. So
I'm like kicking myself now because I passed over them in my library like over and over because maybe it was the covers they had. They just like never quite like pulled me in, and now apparently they're out of print.
Yeah, at least the original covers. Yeah, but they're so good, and I think they're a little younger than some of her other stuff. They're more middle grade, at least the first than some, but they're great.
I keep seeing Tamara Pierce in my school library. I haven't actually looked what series they are, but I keep seeing in the school library and being like, oh, I need to read her. So
she's great.
Read along.
She's excellent.
We still have a little bit of Leo conversation. There was a decade where Leo was the bomb. There was. I was one of the Leo's the bomb people, unfortunately, because I'm an 80s girl. So
I am too, but he was never my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So
fair enough. Fair enough.
My friends loved him.
I was a senior in high school when Leo was born. Wow.
Grow up, little man.
Was in as a young teen. Yeah.
Yep.
Talking about fantasy, we'll be watching.
Yes. Tomorrow night.
No.
I'm so excited for it.
I don't know if I'm going to watch them. I mean, first of all, I don't have the streaming service, so my partner would have to download it and stuff, and I don't know whether that's gonna be a thing that he would do. I asked him to download things, and then like 6 months later, it's like, oh, I downloaded that thing you asked me for, which is fine. But yeah.
No, I'm very excited about it. I'm going to be my husband and I are watching the first 2 episodes tomorrow night. We can't watch it tonight because we had this, so tomorrow night.
Thank you for
I told him, he was like, so I was like, Saturday. I can do Saturday. So there might be, the Rings of Power is the Lord of the Rings one on Amazon Prime. And you know what? It's interesting because a lot of the people I follow and trust mostly love it.
Okay.
I have seen negative reviews. I think that people from the moment, I don't know. I think people are just pissy because they have black elves and people are like, it's supposed to be white, which no. And then I also think people are like, I don't know, some people just get very precious about like things can't live up to what they think the original was.
That was my impression of a lot of the negative reviews too. I'm
a little bit nervous because Lord of the Rings is one of those like formative things for me. So like I'm a little bit of a.
It's a prequel series. It's set like thousands of years earlier. Well, not thousands, but it's like a young. Galadriel is like a teenager at the beginning, I think, or something. Okay. So they have like a really young Galadriel, a young Elrond, like, so it's like that, and they're old because they're elves, so it's like set in a different time.
Okay.
Like I saw somebody saying like, I'm going to enjoy it as fan fiction, and I'm like, and they're not doing a remake. Like that's one of the things that always gets me is when people are like, they're taking away from the original, they're ruining the original. It's like nobody is taking your original movies out of their hands. Like I understand being disappointed in like new content. Like if you like watch it and you're like, I don't like, their story choices. I don't like prequels, whatever. Like that's fine, but it's like nobody. I don't know. It's like the culture wars thing. It's like nobody is like prying these movies out of your hands. And I also got the feeling that some of it was about like the casting choices. And I'm like, that's
people really want to show their backsides.
Right. It's like nobody wants to admit I don't like it when they cast black people. So they're like, it just doesn't fit my vision.
Like that's not what Tolkien wrote. And it's like,
sure. But like also Tolkien was
writing. But also Tolkien actually did write people of color into Middle Earth. And like, I don't know. Anyway, it's a whole thing.
It's just Peter Jackson who decided to take it down a slightly and D&D, which have the evil elves who are black-skinned.
Right. Yeah. In this case, they're not, which I think is amazing. And having that. Anyway, I also feel like there are people going into it looking for something to dislike, which of course, if you go into something expecting it to be bad and looking for something to hate, you'll probably find something.
Yeah. That's very true. We've got, sorry, I have to go back a little bit to see what we were, I don't know what I just did. Sorry. Rory is that series has been getting some harsh reviews. Yes.
There's been, they've been kind of like following along and talking in the comments along with us, I think.
Yeah. Yes, I think so. Yes. I'll probably watch it.
I haven't watched Game of Thrones either, Michael.
I mean, now that I
I haven't seen the original Game of Thrones.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, well, I've watched it all, and having watched all of it, I'm like, don't, because they totally mess it up at the end.
Like
That's what I hear.
It's like one of those shows that it's like so deeply a part of pop culture for the last couple, I guess not couple decades, but however long, that it's like I've never seen an episode, but I know who my favorite and least favorite characters are. Like, which is a weird phenomenon.
I read 2.5 of the books a long time ago. Well, I think part of it is that when it was coming out initially and when the books were really popular, I was also much more conservative and much more uncomfortable with some of the content that like maybe I wouldn't be as uncomfortable with now. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll try it, but we'll see.
Like sometimes you kind of feel like you missed the boat on something, and then like when you hear all this everything about it, you end up being kind of like, oh, do I care?
And like seeing the reactions to the finale just has me like, I can't imagine ever trying that show now. Like I was feeling bad like secondhand. I was disappointed in that finale. Like I can't imagine holding on to that show for that long and then they do you like that. Like I just
the whole of the 8th season, that particular anyway.
Yeah,
that is for another day. This is let's not.
In contrast, Graceling.
Yeah,
back.
People do need to grow up. People do. Galadriel is badass. Kate Blanchett is a badass.
That's how I'm feeling. This is like when the preview for Turning Red like came out and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna see that. Like I don't feel like it was very indicative of what the movie was about, so I didn't really have any interest. And then that asshole reviewer did his whole thing and I'm like, I'm gonna watch this movie and I'm gonna love it. Like,
I mean, honestly, like that, I just that's interesting when stuff like that happens.
Definitely.
I don't know. No, but I'm gonna watch Rings of Power and probably enjoy it. And then I'm probably going to do a podcast episode with people who are going to criticize it. And, it's going to be great. It's going to be so fun.
Now that I actually know a little bit more about it, I am now much more intrigued to watch it. Because initially I thought it was more Lord of the Rings, and I was kind of like, yeah, but that's been done. Like I don't know.
No.
I know like people have different interpretations, but sometimes I get a bit like, we've already been down this path. Why are we doing it again?
No, I think it's going to be interesting because like Elrond actually married Galadriel's daughter. And so I think this follows sort of that time frame of like,
cool. Okay.
So it's like a lot of, it should be interesting.
Yeah. And I like that they're adding content instead of doing like I don't like redoing the original movies or like a prequel on a character nobody cares about or something. It's like it's so separated that I feel like I hope that even people who really enjoy it, if they go in, in good faith, like I don't know about this, but we'll see, that I hope it can win people over. I'm probably gonna watch it, but I'm not in any hurry to. But I think it's exciting.
Yeah,
I'm always behind the times on things, so I mean, I'm only just watching Stranger Things. So
I watch so little TV now, even like on streaming, that I just like never get to things. Like the last new thing I watched, I think, was probably Schmigadoon, and that was like a year ago or something.
I feel like most of the new stuff I'm watching is like more reality type stuff, honestly. So, but yeah, I'm excited for this. Well, also, okay, there's this guy I follow on TikTok who's great, Don Marshall 72, who's like huge like Lord of the Rings buff who knows like everything. And he was saying what's interesting too about the age that this show is set in is that it was actually like a much more wealthy, technologically developed time period, and that the Lord of the Rings films are actually set in like a post-apocalyptic era for Middle-earth. So anyway,
okay.
I think I remember like reading that like Lord of the Rings was in the far future, and I guess my brain just didn't know what to do with that because it was like, forget it. I was like, what?
Oh, Michael, I remember this with the Dune thing. Like I really like Dune too, and there were things that I might have critiqued about the film, but the character swap of that character, she did a great job. They gender swapped a character, like they had a woman of color play a minor male character because there are not very many female characters in Dune, and she did a great job. It was absurd.
Right.
It's like why does it bother people so much if it's like their gender or race or whatever does not have to do with the actual story?
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't, like, if you're doing like Hairspray, it kind of matters which characters are white and which characters are black.
Right.
But from a lot of stories, like especially like fantasy or science fiction, it's like, I don't know, somebody said in the comments, maybe it was Michael, said like it says more about you and your issues than like anything about the actual media.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like when everyone went nuts because one of the stormtroopers in one of the newer Star Wars was a person of color. And it's like, you've never seen a stormtrooper
without a helmet on. Yeah.
Why is it so important to you that he's white? Yeah.
And the two people that supposedly were the original clones, are Maori. So
yeah. I hate to tell you guys, but there's been people of color all along in Star Wars.
Oh my god, what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, everyone in the comments. I've been a bit slack about going through the comments. But I think we're all kind of, like Bethany said, we're all kind of generally agreeing with each other. Yes, I'm the same, but I did read it, so yeah.
I had a Twilight phase, and I am happy to have grown out of that.
Yeah.
It was part of my journey.
I did a public reread of it a few years ago, and it was quite critical.
Yeah.
So I have a whole playlist of videos.
And it's like somehow I haven't read Midnight Sun, nor will I ever. But
it's terrible.
It's even worse than we all thought.
It's so bad. I have a detailed spoilery vlog, so if you ever want to know all the things, play by play without, like, I read it so you
actually
don't have
reading
to. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I saw that was coming out, and I was just like, no, thank you. Why would I want to read that? Why?
No. Yeah. I mean, I literally read like quotation. It was oh man, it was bad.
Not good.
Yeah.
Riverdale is wacky, so I'll never do this.
Mike. Listen, there are a lot of beautiful people on that show.
That's really what you're here for, yeah.
I mean, it's fair enough.
That's one of those shows that I see people describe plot points, and I'm like, you're lying to me, but they're not.
It's wild. I think I've only seen the first, like, I've seen like a season and a half of it because I'm not good at keeping up with stuff. But yeah,
I think I watched most of the first season, and I was enjoying it at the time, and then I like stopped watching that day, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think I care. Like, I don't think I'm gonna watch anymore.
That's kind of how I felt. But people love it.
Yeah.
I did that with First Kill. I kind of like watched the first, I don't know, I watched most of it in like over a week span, and I still had, this was like 2 months ago, and I still haven't gone back to watch the final. I'm just like, now that I'm out of the, like, whatever impulse was keeping me watching, I'm like, do I need to do? No,
it's really. Like sometimes you're in the moment and you're having fun, and if anything takes you out of it, you're like, I could never know what happens, and I would not miss it.
Yeah, I'd be fine. I could die not knowing, and it would be okay. Yeah.
No, Michael, it's the Cole Sprouse and what's her name? Oh, Madeline Petch.
There's several thirst traps.
There are several thirst traps on that show.
It's kind of like a choose your fighter of thirst traps, like.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have wandered very far from the original premise of this live show. So I am thinking, given that it's been an hour and 20 minutes, that maybe we might be done for now. Not that I have not enjoyed the conversation. But
has
I'm
been
sort of
fun.
assuming that it's like getting quite late for Bethany, and I'm
Right.
getting and yeah.
Any final thoughts on Graceling? Or...
Yeah, I just finished this
Okay,
last
so good.
novel. This people are. Oh, funny. Yes, does anyone have any final thoughts on Graceling? I'm assuming Michael does not, but anyone else?
Honestly, it was a lot better than I was expecting. I mean, maybe that sounds terrible, but I wasn't expecting. I mean, I was like, I'm sure it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And I want to read it because people like it. But
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be as good as it is. So
yeah. And I had read it before, and I remembered really loving it. Graceling.
So caught up in it that you remember the name.
But I was like, I don't know. I was surprised kind of all over again I was like, oh yeah, I really like Kristen Cashore's writing. Like the way that she balances character and plot, I think is really good. We talked about like the info dump at the beginning, but in terms of like keeping me engaged in the story, like it's a pretty long book, and again, it's like mostly a journey book, and I was still like so into it the whole time. So I like was expecting to enjoy it again, but it held up even better than I thought.
Well,
yeah.
I guess what's interesting about it too is that I have read something by Kristen Cashore, but it's a much later book she wrote, and I liked it fine, but I wasn't like I don't know, like I liked it, but I didn't have strong feelings. What was it? What was it called? It was that
Was
one.
it Chain Unlimited?
Chain Unlimited, yeah, the one with the umbrellas, yeah.
Yeah.
So like I read that. I liked it, but it wasn't. It was like, but it was more of an experimental book because it was kind of like almost choose your own adventure, but not really. I don't know. It was an interesting book. But I think because I had read that before, I didn't necessarily go into this with super high expectations. I figured, oh, it'll be fine. Yeah.
One thing I want to mention for people reading Fire with us is there is a lot of discussion of SA. I don't think any happens on page, but there's like a lot of like threat of that happening and a lot of talk about that. So I just wanted to give a content note. Yeah, like I said, I don't remember if we see it. I don't remember seeing it happen, but like one of the things about this prequel is that there are people who like part of like their magic is that they are very, very desirable. And so like a lot of people take that to mean that they can try and do whatever they want to them. So I just wanted to mention that for people.
Okay.
Thank you. I had actually, it's been quite a while. I'd actually forgotten that. So thank you for
that. Yeah, like the main character specifically is one of those people. And so you see that like that threat a lot. So I just wanted to mention that.
That is good to know.
Seriously,
she's commenting on rape culture then.
Yeah.
Like back in the day. Like, dude, this series. Okay.
Smart.
Okay. All right.
A lot more going on than you would have thought, given, like Tracy said, she thought it would be more YA than it was. Good to know. Thank you. Good night, Michael.
Thanks for being here, Michael.
Thanks for coming. Does anyone have, well, I feel like this is probably a little bit of a trick question because Kara and I've read on. Does anyone have any predictions for the future?
Do I?
What are your predictions? Like on the spot.
Well, I guess you guys said it's a prequel.
Yeah.
But I get the vibe that they don't all follow the same characters.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't really have any expectations. So I don't know.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. I mean, that's kind of how you went in with this one, and that worked out well. So.
It worked out, yeah. I'm very curious to see how the later books, the ones that have been published recently and still be released, because it's been such a huge gap between. I'm really curious to see how her writing has changed and yeah.
Especially because I think I didn't want to look too much at like the summary for them, but from what I can see, the later two books are not companion novels. I think they follow directly on from the third book.
Oh, okay.
So that's going to be really interesting because that is like a change, you know, from the first
Yeah.
three.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's interesting.
I'm curious too, because Fire is the only one of the original three that I didn't give 5 stars. So now I'm like, am I gonna like it more this time around? I don't know.
Well, I wonder, right, like if you would not give it 5 stars because you don't like the content of like what it's talking about, but if that's what it's doing, it seems like I'm so impressed that
Right.
it's like that ahead of its time in the commentary
Right.
it's doing.
I think like, because I didn't read it that long ago, but from what I remember, I found it just a little bit less engaging because I think there was, I think it was like the military focus wasn't as interesting to me, but other than like, I remember very little about what actually happens. Like with Graceling, I remembered most of the big plot things. Fire, not very much. So like, this is going to be very interesting for me.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wonder too if like part of it would have been the content. When did I read Fire? You guys can keep talking while I look this up.
I agree. I actually only really remembered about Graceling. The only thing I really remembered was that she figured out that her Grace wasn't what she thought it was, and everything else I've kind of forgotten. I kind of remembered a little bit of Lek because of later stuff, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see how I'll think about it again as I go into it again.
I remembered also, in case you were curious, I read Fire 5 years ago. I can't believe it's actually been longer than I thought. So maybe I will change my mind about stuff. The things I remembered from Graceling, I remembered the thing about Katz's Grace. I was pretty sure that Poe could read minds, and then that was confirmed, which I thought was very interesting. I remembered Lek being the villain, and I vaguely remembered the final confrontation, but I remembered Poe being blinded, but I did not remember that he stays blind at the end, which like was also, I think, an unusual thing for a fantasy book to do. Like, and because of his grace, he can kind of move like he's not. But I feel like in a lot of other stories, he would have been magically cured or something, and that's not what happened.
So what's interesting is because I have the new edition of the book, and it has an author's note, like an updated author's note, and she actually says that she wishes she had thought about the fact that she was playing into this like magical healing of a disability trope with what she wrote initially, and that like she sees that there were missteps in how she handled that, which is interesting.
That is interesting.
Especially, I find it like, I don't know. There's been a lot of conversation with authors who seem to like get very offended by people bringing up things or commenting on things or what have you. So I find it really interesting that she's gone that far that she's even written a note to say that like, hey, maybe I just handled it. I think that says a lot about like her intent and what she's trying to do. And
I'm glad. I didn't realize she had a note in the new edition, but that's very cool.
I'm just going to go in blind. That's fair enough. The animals in the newer books.
Cool.
Cool. I'm going to go and fire with new eyes looking at the subtext. Yeah, definitely. I think I will probably as well now that like had a bit more of a chat about things as well.
Yeah, because I definitely think. I mean, I'm still shocked that it was 5 years ago. I'm like, oh, that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago that I read Fire. But it's like, even though I had read things that dealt with that content before, I definitely think the level of conversation we were having about assault and harassment was not the same. So I definitely think, like Tracy was saying, I think I'm going to see things that happen in that book differently now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's right. Not like I'm looking forward to it, but we need like another phrase for it's like I'm not excited, but like this will be interesting.
I feel like I'm looking forward to it in the sense that it'll be like looking forward to seeing some nuance around that conversation, especially from something that was written so long ago, like written a while ago. So I don't know if I'm looking forward to the specifics, but certainly the underlying conversation and subtext that Yeah.
I'm just really pleased that I liked this so much because I was like, well, I guess I'm committed to this whole thing. I hope I actually like these books.
I hope I haven't just I'm looking out of this now. Read the one.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was really good, and it's interesting. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good one to discuss too, because there is so much
Yes.
nuance to what she's doing. Even though like the prose, the actual plot is relatively straightforward, but there's a lot of subtext.
Absolutely.
Right. It's kind of a straightforward like story, but
Mm-hmm.
there's so much other things going on. Yeah,
Definitely.
I'm very excited we're doing this, and I'm like very happy that it lived up. Like it was, I think it even exceeded my memory of it. And I've heard people talk about like, you can't trust any of my star ratings before like 3 years ago. So I knew I gave it 5 stars the first time, but I'm like, you know what? Like 2017 Kara, she knew some things. Like her taste can stay at least.
Yeah, for this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have like one example, but ooh.
Oh, I didn't know they were making Damsel. Ooh, that is a controversial book. I loved it, but it is a controversial book.
I own that. I'm actually like very interested to read that now. I didn't realize it's that old.
It's not 2014. It's not from 2014.
Okay, I was like, I remember people talking about it just a few years ago.
Yeah, no, because it came out while I was on BookTube. If it's the one I'm thinking about. And it's not and the other thing about it is it's not really a fantasy. It's horror with a fairy tale facade.
Okay.
About essay. That's interesting that they're making it. Yeah, Kara, I would say just like before you go into it, read some reviews, like if you're gonna pick it up, because it's very intense. And gets graphic, especially for a YA book. So
I think I remember hearing a couple of reviewers talk about like some specific things that happen later, but I think I probably will refresh myself on some.
I would. Like I loved it, but a lot of people hated it. So anyway, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like we kind of wrapped things up a little bit. And yeah, I'm very excited.
Thank you for
thanks for hosting.
Thank you so much for agreeing to join, being my co-host, and thank you to everyone that joined us for the live show. It's been fantastic to have all the conversations, and for you all to be here.
And thank you guys for watching it back.
Sorry,
I was gonna say thank you to people who watch it back. I know sometimes people
watch
later, which we appreciate.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I always forget to say that. Thank you to those people who are watching it back. Absolutely, that's really awesome. And yeah, please subscribe to everybody, including me. But yeah, we will be reading Fire next. So this is what we'll be reading now in September, and the live show. I can't remember exactly the times I said.
It's like, I think we're pushing it by a week because I had stuff going on. I think it's the 14th for US.
Yes. So Friday night, the 14th, which is 15th for us in Australia. And I think because we wanted to keep Bethany's time the same because of kids' bedtime routines and stuff. So mine and Kara's time will change. But I'll put all that up on Twitter and everything when it's closer to the time.
Yeah, I think my time is actually the same. I think it's just because of where your guys' is. Mel, I was actually going to say, like, I appreciate you keeping our US time zones the same because your time is like all over the place. I think there's like a difference of like 2 or 3 hours depending on which date. So I appreciate.
I think that you guys might come out of daylight saving and then we go into it. We go into it a week before you come out or something like that.
I remember I was looking at the graphic and like mine and Bethany's times are the same every time and Mel's like all over the place. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, that's okay. You're welcome, Tracy. Thank you for joining us. See you all next month. Indeed. Keep an eye on our Twitters for all that information. So yeah. All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.